Salut și bine ați venit la o nouă ediție ZF IT Generation. În emisiunea de astăzi vom începe o serie în cadrul căreia vă vom prezenta imagini de la evenimentul Romanian Start-Up Days, organizat în Washington DC de Ambasada României în SUA, alături de acceleratorul InnovX-BCR. În ediția de astăzi vă prezentăm discuțiile dintr-un panel format din antreprenori și investitori de origine română din Statele Unite, care au discutat despre cum văd ecosistemul de startup-uri din România și ce cred că ar putea fi făcut pentru ca acesta să se dezvolte într-un ritm mai alert. Vă invităm, deci, să urmăriți în cele ce urmează panelul care a avut titlul De la Startup la Exit, călătoria unui antreprenor de succes. În cadrul acestui panel au participat Alex Urdea, Managing Partner Deep Ocean Partners, Mihai Lehene, președinte Romanian United Fund și Daniela Kammrath, CEO al RAISE.
I am a Romanian American. I have 20 years of business experience and 8 years of non-profit experience. Romanian American Institute for Smart Energy is the latest baby. We kept talking about companies and babies. It's a non-profit organization that we started here in Washington, D.C. at the initiative of Ambassador României. We are working to support the Romanian energy players to bridge the connection with the American companies. We have a role of a trade association and a think tank. We have a good board, a great board, and amazing advisors on our side. If you need any more details about what we try to do, it's very important for us to also look at the educational part. It was mentioned by a lot of you, including by Natalia from Plug and Play. And we would like to map out all the opportunities and the needs that are in the Romanian market to turn around towards the American market and find and fulfill those needs, to help create strategic partnerships, and hopefully at the end of each year we can count how many partnerships like this amazing one that we just witnessed the announcement about earlier today about Tina and Maria's team. And I can talk about it for a long time, so please ask any questions you feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. I'm going to pass the microphone to Alex.
Apologies, everyone. I feel like it may just be allergies, so hopefully. I'm Romanian by origin. I was born in Bucharest, but came here when I was 5 years old. So a bit of a transplant, but looking to get back to my roots, so to speak. So I had a career in institutional finance for 22 years. I've done a lot in opportunistic credit, in private equity, in venture capital. I've always been an investor across a broad swath, a broad spectrum. For the past 7 years, I've focused specifically on tech-enabled businesses, mostly here in the U.S., though increasingly more and more interested in emerging markets. I've always wanted to have an eye towards where someone else isn't looking. When the market zigs, I want to zag, etc. I've funded dozens of fintechs, e-commerce businesses, supply chain logistics businesses, SaaS. Those are probably my domains of expertise more than anything else. I've probably seen thousands of pitch decks, talked to hundreds of management teams across the board, mostly in the earlier stage tech ecosystem. Instead of being a regular way VC, I started a business that I grew to about $1 billion in AUM to do lending into early stage technology businesses. So if you're an e-commerce company, you need inventory. If you're a fintech that's doing lending, you need a warehouse facility to use, lend. Logistics business is the same way. Any capital intensive business in that regard. So while I was sitting here in the audience and realized that I had to speak, I jotted down some notes that I thought were, as it seems, 10 commandments. So some of the things that I've learned and seen along the way, and I'll keep it brief. One, don't boil the ocean. I think a lot of startups are very good about being very scatterbrained and trying to solve every problem known to man, trying to solve every problem that is up and down, enterprise, SME, etc. 2, don't be schizophrenic. You need to have an operating plan. You need to run a business. You don't need to run a video game, right? So 3, don't overraise. Constantly see companies that are trying to raise too much capital at too high of a valuation. Now the market's kind of helped us with that over the past couple of years. I've always said, don't worry about the current valuation. Worry about the next one. Worry about the milestones that you're going to hit and what your likelihood is going to be that you hit those milestones with the capital that you're going to raise. 4, be efficient. That was lost on us for the past decade or so, and especially in the venture capital world, where more money, we got more opportunity to deploy at a faster and faster rate. It's no longer a growth at all costs. Unit economics really matter. 5, not all capital is the same, right? Just because you get capital in the door doesn't mean that they're going to enable you, they're going to help you, they're going to open doors, network, etc. So be mindful of who's on your cap table. 6, stop worrying about the exit. Start worrying about building a real business. Founders are really, really good at looking at 2 lenses. 1, the immediate future, and 2, 10 years down the line. Start worrying about 2-3 years. How are you going to hit those intermediate milestones? 7, be mindful of unit economics. I mentioned that one already. Okay. I guess to expand on that, in some of the worlds that I deal in, lifetime value and customer acquisition costs. Customer acquisition costs usually only go one direction. As you grow and scale, they will only go up. As you penetrate a market and you're trying to sell your commodity goods, there's only so much of that Casper mattress that someone wants. You're going to have to pay more for that marketing spend to sell the incremental product. 8, don't be complacent about an MVP, a minimum viable product. Constantly I see startups that create a product at the beginning. It's one part innovation, and then never look at that again and try to hammer the same product into the market over and over and over again without thought of progression. Products have life cycles. You don't have the ability to sell the same thing. You have to be evolutionary, if not revolutionary. You have to think about complementary products, other things like that that can expand that LTV. 9, be strategic about strategic investors. Oftentimes I hear someone, Amazon wants to invest in my business, Microsoft wants to invest in my business, XYZ. If you do this too early in your product life cycle and your company's life cycle, you're probably closing more doors than you're opening. 10, have good advisors. Right? These are people that come from a wide swath of your domain, people that have finance expertise, people that have product expertise, people that have marketing, other things like that. Constantly I find people that are getting advisors that put them on the cap table because they have a brand name, but if they're not going to help you, it's not going to be useful to your business.
Well, that was a great lesson. I always enjoy talking to Alex because I learned so much from him, and I think he's made a lot of great points that we've discussed over the past couple of years. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Mihai Lehene. I moved to the United States in 2002. I did my master at USC in Chicago. I worked in finance. My background is computer science, but I worked in the finance industry. I became a partner at a fairly sizable, I want to say medium-sized, high-frequency trading firm. It was a very good ride for almost 15 years. I started my own family office, my own company, my own investment company 7 years ago, almost 8 now. It has its own CEO. It's run by a good friend of mine, a partner of mine. And that allowed me 2 years ago to retire from my all my business endeavors, to dedicate my time to building the ecosystem and helping out. And I don't mean here the ecosystem only in the business sense, because I know all of us, we're here to discuss about business, but I'm passionate about connecting the Romanian diaspora globally, connecting the Romanian diaspora to Romania when it comes to philanthropic issues as well as business. And to kind of complete and take Alex's last advice, one of the things that I've seen lacking in Romanian startups is great advisors. And you've seen Alex, you realize how much value somebody can bring to your table when they join your startup. I also want to give you a little bit of a perspective. Where am I coming from? So I started getting involved in venture capital 5 years ago, no, 6 years ago. I am one of the original founders of Invitați for Midwest. I joined the second month after they opened there. It is today the second largest chapter of the largest angel network investors in the world. It's called Invitați, and so I see pretty much probably around 100 startups a year when I'm not busy and I go to the meetings. I see probably around 100 startups a year. In the past 3 years or so, I started looking at Romanian startups. Over the past 6 years since I've been involved in angel investing, I invested in over 50 companies, over 50 startups, many of them in biotech, technology, and like I said, my background is in software, and medical devices, immuno-oncology, and so on and so forth. I have invested in 9 companies that have a Romanian entrepreneur. They had a Romanian founder, or were actually based in Romania. And I can actually see, I see patterns. That's, my mind is set up to see patterns, but I see patterns between all the Romanian startups that I see that are presenting and the startups here that are presenting in the United States. You've seen here tonight a presentation of an American company, and you can tell that it's different. So I think, if because I want to sort of circle the microphone. I think there's a lot to learn. As a Romanian startup, there's a lot to learn about how to get great advisors. How do you need to look before you go look for investors? How does your cap table need to look? How does your debt need to look before you go out there looking for investors, looking for advisors? I'd like to end with one caveat here, which is this is an ecosystem that needs to be built. And in order to illustrate this caveat and the fact that we need an ecosystem, I'd like to tell a little story. We invested in a bunch of companies from Israel, and Israel is known as a very, it's a great ecosystem, and it has a great relationship with the United States. And one of the best companies that we invested in, they were selling a product in the United States, and I asked them about their team and how are they so successful. I want to tell you, the companies that we invest in that are massively successful, we can tell from the very beginning that they are going to be successful. And this looked amazing from the get-go. I mean, their growth was just like off the charts. And I asked them, how are you doing this? What's your team look like? They said, we have 35 developers in Israel. We have a team of 15 in California. Our whole sales team is in California. And then he said he had a key point there. He said, but we sell our products in the United States through over 2,000 family offices, venture funds, and small capital firms that are helping us get our product there. And they represent our network in the territory, right? So now I'm going to take a very successful Romanian company and a very successful Israeli company that sell the same exact product and they want to come to the United States. And I'm going to ask you, what's your support? And the answer is, unfortunately, it's lacking and it needs to be built. And I know that when you come here, what you're looking for is support. And I'd just like to end by saying, I am here to help. Alex is here to help. Our goal is to build and develop this ecosystem. We'd love to get to know you better, but at the same time, I think we need to work together to identify the right ways to build this ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mihai is modest, but he also built Romanian United Fund. I think you've heard of it. I had the pleasure to be on the board and even run it for a while, and we've done a lot of good to Romania, so giving back is also part of being an entrepreneur. So don't forget that as well. Just help the businesses near you or organizations that you care for. Just wanted to say.
It's true. So, for the past 2 years, my main activity has been as the president of this organization called Romanian United Fund. Romanian United Fund is today the largest nonprofit in the Romanian diaspora. We act as a fundraising platform. Initially, that was our goal. So we raised over $2.5 million. We financed over 70 projects in Romania, starting with Dorește Viața, Magic Camp. You probably heard about the campaign, Noi construim un spital. Via Transilvanica, we financed Via Transilvanica for over $140,000. But today, in 2023, one thing we realized is that we have over 8,000 contacts all around the world. And we have a lot of information about where these people are, what they do, what they're experts in. So we have slowly become a super connector of sorts. And lately, a lot of the calls that we get and a lot of the people that are reaching out to us, what they're saying is, hey, we work in aerospace industry, or we work, we got a call the other week from Autovortex. I'll tell you another story. Who here has heard about Autovortex? The Romanian national robotics champion, whatever. So Autovortex is from Brașov. We sponsored them for 3 years in a row to come to the United States. They're in robotics and they come to the international championship. So for the 3rd year in a row, they called us. They told us, we need an additional $15,000 to fly to Houston. It's the International Robotics Championship, and we need to finance our trip. And I said, how many hours do I have to get the money for you? They said, you got 48 hours. So I said, okay, just go, we'll figure it out. So we were able to raise half the money in about 24 hours. But here's the interesting part of the story. So Autovortex goes to Houston at the International Robotics Championship, and they advance to each of the states. So they send us updates with pictures, with a robot, with everything, and they say, we won, we won, we won. And then in the last round, they say, well, this is our last round. We hope we win. Just root for us now. So we're all thinking of them, and then they come back and they said, we did not win. But here's the caveat. On that podium, there's 4 teams. Every one of those 4 teams was Romanian. On the podium in Houston, April 18th to April 20th, just 10 days ago, on the podium at the International Robotics Championship, the 4 top winners were 4 Romanian teams. The guy there that was presenting them said, can I get a Romanian passport? So this is real. I'm not kidding. This is a real story. So what we focus on, to go back, is we focus on connecting people. And again, we're here to help out through the organization, through Romanian United Fund, through everything that we do. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Any questions? I'm sorry I can't have the microphone, but questions are
Actually, what we all want to ask is to share your knowledge, and actually what we want is to give some advices, 1 or 2 advices based on what you saw today in the Romanian companies that were present to the Select USA, and they were here as well. What advices can you bring to them in order for them to improve their speeches, their pitches, and also their presence wherever, even if we speak about US market or European market or Asian market, because for sure you have at least 2 advices that I think that you are able to give based on your experience. And
I think we do have a lot. We welcome individual questions. We're not going to be able to go through everything, but I'm going to pass the microphone first and let's see.
So I'm a marketing person and branding person, so I think it's very good to have the brand on each slide. It's very good to have less work on each slide, many figures and testimonials. And Americans are very transactional. They need to hear how things can improve their business or anything that you bring to the partnership. So the story is also important, but just lace it with figures so they get it. That's what I was trying to do in some of my questions. That's what I think.
Just a show of hands. How, maybe we'll do it this way. How many of you that have presented today or that have ever presented your startups believe that someone looks through your deck for more than 3 minutes? How many of you think that someone looks at your deck for more than a minute? I'll tell you, as someone that has marketed my own enterprises, the average is 36 seconds. That's the average. Most people, if you think about how busy, especially venture capitalists are, and how schizophrenic they are, typically it's, I'm looking at it on my phone, I'm flipping through it very quickly, and then I'm looking at it, if you're lucky, 2 minutes before they're hopping on that Zoom call with you. Usually it's 4 minutes into the call. So the point is that you need to keep things as brief, concise, and the salient points need to come up to the surface very, very quickly.
I would agree with Alex. I would focus on two things, and I agree that some of the companies presenting here today may not be in revenue yet. But the most important thing for an investor is how they're going to make money. Okay, so and for that, if there's any sort of revenue, we need to see that traction. We need to see that growth. Okay. The other thing that I also wanted to say is focus. Try to prove that you do one thing extremely well, and that you're going to be able to scale that and explode it 10,000 times. I think that's again we have a lot, but these are two of my top advice pieces of advice. I would also say be very mindful of who you're presenting to, and then make sure that the audience, your deck needs to be sort of adjusted for whatever the audience is, and you should know very well who your audience is. So in everybody's case here, I think it would have been important for you to know who's going to be in the room beforehand. So just try to do that next time. And then always don't forget about advisors.
All right, so last question, because I know we're going. But first of all, it's been excellent to witness this, and Bogdan has been very kind enough to invite me to this. I am Romanian born as well, and to see this ecosystem, it's incredible, and it's being built. I know that a lot of the startups here are looking at expanding in the US market, but I think it's very important to consider that there is a large brain drain that is happening in Romania. And expanding in the US market doesn't mean that you have to leave Romania. There are a lot of medical doctors, a lot of 80 plus 100,000 Romanians around the diaspora, or more. Don't fact check me on it.
8 million?
Yeah. But I think that everybody wants to help, and you guys are the future, and it needs to be protected and grown much more, so that future generations can have even better opportunities in Romania and not outside of it. So to continue, to ask you a question actually, how would you advise companies that are looking at coming into the US market and still having and nurturing the talent that exists in Romania and continue to grow in both markets? while supporting the Romanian market and education there.
One thing that I'd say is another learning lesson. I found a lot of startups that have expanded into international markets or non-core markets way too fast. And when you have an early stage startup that you're still trying to perfect your product, build your culture, create a defensive moat around your business, to then go out and dilute that and expand internationally, there's a lot of patience in entrepreneurship and the growth that comes with it. Again, be long-term minded. Also, just make sure that the business, this is a hyper competitive market. There is unlimited capital here. There is, unlimited talent here. And so understanding what the competitive landscape is for your product or service or anything like that here, just make sure that you do that analysis beforehand, because I can tell you that there's probably 15, 20, 50, 100 companies that are doing something similar here. And they're probably better funded, and they probably have more polish on their deck, and they probably speak English a little bit better, and they probably all of these things. So it is an uphill battle. It's not an insurmountable uphill battle, but you need to make sure that you have all of those things, right? And I think the first generation of anything, of any immigrant into a new population, which a company is the same, it's always going to be harder. And then you see the second generation, and it's that much easier, right? So I think there's a lot of learning lessons along the way. The best thing you could do is get that local expertise, under your stead as well.
So I'd like to continue the answer, the advice for how to proceed coming to the United States. And I would like to say that it's a little bit nuanced. We've seen here companies that are very early stage that have to create a product. We've seen companies that are not startups at all. Okay, if you have a company that offers kind of like consulting services, it's not really considered a startup. And what you're looking for is, you're looking for business development. You have a company that produces something in Romania, you're looking to expand in the United States. So the advice would be different based on sort of the stage and the type of company. For startups, I want to make sure that everybody here understands. I've seen some quite interesting products, okay? But a true startup will be successful if, and only if, and when you build a product that is so good that it basically sells itself and it flies off the shelf. And that's what I want to see as an investor. And that's basically what's going to translate into that growth that makes me think, this is something I want to invest in. Now, this is assuming you're in revenue stage, okay? Now, let's assume that we take, I'm sorry, what was the company's name again? Synaptic, right? So, I thought it was a great idea. They're not in revenue stage yet, right? So, in that sense, now you don't have that traction. Now you want to focus on the product. And what I'd like to see is the differentiator. Okay, it's you and 10,000 other people that have the same idea. What makes you special? Why are you better than other people? And what are you bringing to the table in building that product if it doesn't exist? So, that would be my answer. Now, I know you got a little bit emotional about this ecosystem. I want to say this. One thing. Romania today has the greatest opportunity any country has in the world. Romania has the 5th largest diaspora as a percentage of the people that have left the country and live abroad in the world. Okay? The number 1 diaspora in the world is the Irish diaspora at 20 million people abroad, declared Irish, 7th generation or whatever, versus 5 million people in Ireland. However, Romania, with the 5th largest population in the world in the diaspora, every one of us, or almost every one of us, first generation of Romanians, that are still connected, that still feel this passion for staying connected with Romania, has the greatest opportunity out of any country in the world today to make a huge leap forward in the next 30 years. Now it rests, it's upon us to take advantage of this opportunity. It is literally upon every one of us to transmit to everyone else that this is important and it must be done today. So I want you to not think about the brain drain. Think about the great potential that lies ahead.
And to complete, because I know there are a lot of questions, just we are always going to be Romanian at heart. Think of us as a great resource that can help grow your business, especially what we've created with Rise. I think any disruption or anything you create that's worth bringing to this market, it has to be planned, as you both said, because you are more in the investment market involved. And what is very interesting is that when you are at the table with somebody that wants to do business with you, they do not care where you come from. They care about how well you get the message across, what you bring to the table, and how you can deliver. And we've seen a lot of American companies going to Romania. There is still a lot to build there. We'll help you from here, but help us to create in Romania an environment that can make people grow and the companies to have that word of mouth among them. Besides being a beautiful country with very intelligent and innovative people, there is also a business environment that is helping businesses grow. So we'll do our part here. We are all your partners. I am emotional too. There were more questions.
Well, I had questions. I want to come back to what Alex was saying, that on average, venture capitalists is spending 36 seconds on a pitch. And I want to ask you, which are the two most important slides that you are looking at that help you decide whether to move on or just drop the pitch?
I'd say framing the opportunity and what are you asking for, right? The intro and the exit. Largely, out of that 36 seconds, half of that is probably spent on that first slide. So if you can't get your message across on that first slide succinctly, you probably already lost it. So, all the rest is kind of filler.
Thank you very much. And another one, very short one. What's the biggest amount that you've seen invested in a revenue company, and for how much of the equity?
I've seen a lot of absurdity, even in a post-COVID, maybe pre-meltdown stage in early 22. I've seen 25 million invested at 100 million post, which is not a good thing, just to be clear. The ability to, and there's a lot of others, right? There was a company in the e-commerce space called Kite that raised an even more gargantuan valuation, but the ones that I've been close to, you limit the opportunity to have some sort of successful exit if you raise at valuations that just do not make any sense. And I've seen the ego and the hubris and the paper net worth and people pointing to it for the longest time, and I just laughed at it, right? So I do think that this is a very healthy dose of reality. I think that there are plenty of great companies that continue to get funded at reasonable valuations and with good products and good teams. So it's the headlines and the articles are clickbait. I think there's plenty of things that are going on that are very good, and this is just a healthy purge of the environment.
Thank you very much. And one very short one, the last one. What would you see as being the main difference between racing in Europe and racing here as a pre-seed company?
And this is not from experience, right? I try to speak from where I think I have, experience and depth. My understanding of the European ecosystem is that there's just a lot fewer euros, let's say, circulating around than there are dollars in this world. In the past 5 years, a lot of US-centric venture capitalists decided that they wanted to go abroad. And so that created an inundation of capital into Western Europe, into Eastern, into more emerging markets, and all of that capital has retrenched. So I think, they say that when America sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. I think you need to be prepared for a bit of a capital drought. Now, I think that it's some amount of capital drought creates an ability to operate more efficiently, which I think is healthy. Too much, and you're cutting into bone, right? And so that's probably the only advice that I could give from any sort of real understanding.
So, I'm not that I disagree with Alex, but I want to remind you that investors love to invest in companies that don't really need money. So if you're desperate for money, then that's actually it's kind of a push away. So if you're mindful, okay, I think Romanians, we are all very mindful with the way we spend money. So one thing that I think is good about Romanian companies is that they're running fairly lean, okay? Now one mistake that I see is that, not necessarily a mistake, right? I've seen even today, I've seen one of the companies that are focused on Romania and the legal system in Romania and in Europe. That is not something that we can invest here, or there's any attractiveness to invest here in the United States. So while I've seen a lot of companies coming from Romania, I think only 1 in 8 are probably investable pieces in the sense that they apply into what we think as the wide world. You know, they tend to think either locally or semi-locally at the Central and Eastern European market, and I don't think there's a lot of interest for companies, for investors here to invest in such products.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Blondine with Enrich. It's a European Horizon funded program, and it's a good leeway. So I have a question for the panel and a question for all of you. So have you invested in companies, in Romanian companies who have received European funding? European Innovation Council, EIC accelerators type of grants?
I did.
You did? And any of you, have you ever applied or received European grants? Yes? Because I think there are a lot of potential, we see a lot of companies who actually may not have access to VCs or angels, but there are a lot of the first 200, 300, $500,000, or even sometimes more that can come from European programs. I know it can be a pain, but there's such tremendous opportunities of, even legal programs for you to come back. And I was wondering, and they engage investors like you, to match or to leverage those companies. And so I was very impressed to see all the Romanian delegation, being the strongest European delegation, and just was wondering, there are a lot of connections with other European countries that can help as well.
The only comment that I'll make is I've been studying emerging markets for the past couple of years as an opportunity set that has less competition from the capital side. And Romania in particular, one, because I wanted to give back to the community, but two, because I think there's very real opportunity there. And while up until most recently, April, I had not made a single investment. And I think that kind of begets the same kind of patience that I think entrepreneurs need to have. Having a better understanding of the ecosystem that you're investing in is really important. So for me, it's very much been, let me learn and let me teach what I know and partner here. So I did invest and incubated an e-commerce business that's selling on eMAG. The only reason why I did that was because I funded the largest e-commerce aggregator in the world, a company called Thrasio. So, and another dozen businesses around the world that did exactly the same model. So I had the domain expertise to help build that business alongside the founder, and in a market that I think is wildly more attractive than anything in the developed world. So you have to have a thesis, and you have to have a thesis that is catered to that local market, whether that's the US, Romania, and anywhere else. And I'd also say, depending on your business, right, everyone's so keen to get here so fast, but have you farmed the opportunity within your own backyard enough? And are there other ways to do that? And again, because I think it's that much more defensible. So I came to Alianza 2 years ago for the first time. I was on garden leave. I'd left my firm that I built for a while and had been just privately investing. And so my father said, "You're a bum. Why don't you go? You always wanted to do something for Romania. Go check it out." I was lucky and fortunate enough to meet Mihai at that first conference, and I was blown away. I was blown away by the smarts and by just the business building community that is there, away from tech, away from everything, just real business. And it was just really eye-opening to me. And I'd almost say, it's an almost unfair advantage if you couple capital availability from the West with opportunity in a country like Romania. And that to me is actually what excites me more than yet another startup here in the US or yet another. I think COVID's taught us that you could build a business from anywhere in the world, right? Remotely distributed, etc. But I've always said, it's a time of just market volatility overall. And one of the theses that I've been testing is, can you actually hide in emerging markets? It's a very contrarian view. But if you look at the demographic growth rates and trends, the e-commerce penetration, credit penetration, other things like that, there are things that are really interesting that I think you'd want to just shudder away from the US in particular at this point.
Access to talent in Romania, there is tremendous talent. So this is really
I'd like to add that this is very early in the game. The way that we look at it is the true potential of this relationship, which is, let's call it a transatlantic relationship. The true potential will start probably almost 10 years out. That's our view. But the good thing is that many times there's a long tail. So if you guys are here from sort of the get-go and you build a relationship, it takes a long time to build the trust. So you're doing the right thing. But in order to ride the wave, we have to be a little bit patient. But the potential is tremendous. We're scratching the surface. Is probably not even. We haven't even scratched the surface. Let's put it that way.
Thanks. Alex, you touched a very interesting point earlier on when you mentioned about the e-commerce company that you invested in. And I feel like here there is a little bit of uneven balancing between the views of the investors and the VCs as opposed to the startups. You get the chance of seeing 100 pitches a year and you go through them. But on our side, it's very hard, at least not to my knowledge, to browse the investment thesis, because exactly your point of matching the investment thesis and the value that you can, as investors, can bring to the table to the startup for that gain. That was one of your advices, so that we are strategic when we are looking for strategic investments. On the other hand, on the startup side, we don't get the chance to see 100 VCs investment thesis a year. So that unbalance, and that even, how do you recommend that we approach it from our side, that scouting of identifying strategic investment in our own field and vice versa?
One of the things at this last Alianza conference was Mihai Lehene from Endeavor came and spoke. Endeavor is a global mentorship program for entrepreneurs, and it's a selective program where you're allowed in and voted in and everything like that. But if you need to find mentorship, I think that's probably what's most missing, right now in an early stage ecosystem like that. But finding that community, right, and finding anyone within the domain. If it's one thing that VCs in the US are very, very good at, it's just grassroots networking, right? And I don't know yet the opportunity in Romania to do that, or the cultural mindset in doing that, but I'm on calls for 10 hours a day, almost back to back. You meet a lot of people that introduce you to a lot of other people, and the network expands very quickly. I had absolutely zero connectivity, aside from my immediate family in Romania 2 years ago. I could probably count 300 or 400 people that I've met in the past couple of years. So you have to be proactive. I jokingly said I actually need to spare some time for real work, not just meeting more people. But that is part of that mentality, right? And I think there's that. You can only do so much modeling work. You can only do so much product development. You can only do whatever else. Like sometimes you just need to be immersed. And how do you make discrete outcomes into a continuous function? You have a lot of reps, right? So.
And to go on what Alex said, I think there is the opportunity around with the internet and with all kinds of networks to find mentors within your community in Romania, but also to reach out to people around the globe. There is no limit. There are all those courses that are happening from prestigious universities. So it's just you just need to put more time into it. That's
congratulate the Embassy of Romania to the United States for organizing this event, because this is a great example of a start for how we should be doing this. So, you know, hands down for